Okay, we're live. Hopefully the connection stays up this time. I tried something a little bit different with the setup, so we'll see if that makes any difference. Almost ready to start, less than a minute. Okay, let's go. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Okay, so this is a second attempt to do the number 6, it is, in the Girimananda Sutta. This is the sutta where the Buddha teaches the 10 perceptions. So it's all about different states of mind and training yourself to perceive through those lenses. This is the quality of sanya, which is how we fabricate our experience. And sanya is fluid. It is we can phase. Perception for today is the perception of dispassion, viraga. Dispassion is a very literal translation of viraga. Raga is passion, and vi is to cut off or terminate. The commentary, which if you have Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, you'll see he footnotes the commentary to this section. The commentary identifies viraga with nibbana. And of course, in the state of nibbana, there's no passion. But I think the commentary may be overreaching a bit here. It's not, for one thing, to train oneself to have a perception really be possible, but also used elsewhere in the suttas in a technical sense as one of the states leading into nibbana, particularly in the Upanishad Sutta. There's a list of mental states that occur to one moving towards liberation. And the particular sequence is Nibbida, Viraga, Nirodha, Vimutti. Nibbida is one of those Pali words that's really not translatable. Different attempts have been made. I think maybe the closest might be disenchantment or disillusion. It's when the nature of samsara has seen the impermanence and suffering of samsara and begins to turn away from it. Some older translations translate it as revulsion, which I think is too strong. It's not really a state of revulsion, but a state of turning away, of dissociating oneself from the process. And this leads to viraga, dispassion, which is when the passion or raga is here we could take it as a close synonym to tanha in the Second Noble Truth or in the dependent origination. Tanha or raga is the engine or the motive force of the wheel of becoming. In each moment, the unenlightened is craving to take in passion that drives drives the consciousness on to the taking of objects, and it's expressed on a broader scale as sensual desire, but also the desire for existence. And this, because of nibbida, because of the disenchantment with the samsaric process, the motive force, the desire or raga, fades. And this leads to nirodha, cessation, when the process comes to a stop, which culminates in mumukti, liberation. So in this particular sutta, in the Girimananda Sutta, the Buddha is talking about perception, sanya. And one of the to train the perception is viraga, or to perceive things in a passionate way, to quell the desire for experience and just allow experience to be in its pure state, without this without the clinging or desire or attachment. Just let whatever is be. And this would also include the negative form of desire, which is aversion, to not fall prey to perceiving things in a negative or a positive sense, but to perceive them in a equanimous sense, that this is just as it is. And to perceive in that way is very peaceful. A perception that leads to liberation, that leads on to nibbana, if we perceive things in that way. If we perceive things with the eye of desire, burning with raga, then we're feeding the process of dependent origination. We're feeding the process of coming into being, feeding samsara, and fueling the process of suffering, of birth and sickness, old age, and death, becoming. So it's pretty short, but I don't really have anything else particular to add to this perception. So I'll go to the chat now and continue with the discussion based on questions that see that the video is how can we understand the use of harshness in teaching by the Buddha and some contemporary teachers as a reflection of the analogy of the horse trainer in the Ananda Sutta when kindness fails? The Buddha was occasionally harsh, and he would, but not to any real degree compared to some moderns. Usually, the harshest thing he would say to someone is, "Oh, foolish man." He was, of course, more harsh to Devadatta when they worship of the Sangha, and that's probably the harshest thing the Buddha said in the recorded texts. Sometimes modern teachers can be fierce. This is sometimes a teaching method in Thailand. Some of the Thai Ajahns were reputed to be pretty ferocious, and students would be afraid of them. I heard one senior teacher once say that he was passing on secondhand from some other teacher that who this the originator of this saying was one of these fierce teachers, and he said the his theory of teaching is to make the student more afraid of the teacher than of the void. So sometimes a sluggish student. Okay, the chat is jumping up on me here. Let me run it down. Okay, next question. What is it that allows one to make the leap from viraga to the actual experience of nibbana? Does it just happen by itself due to past karma, or is there something one can do? Really, there's nothing to be done. A parallel teaching that phrases things in a somewhat different terminology, but really covers the same ground is the 24 stages of insight. And the stage that would include viraga would be equanimity about formations. When one reaches a state of having come through all the storms and difficult passages, one reaches a place of peace. And the meditation just seems to happen automatically on its own, and there's no feeling of effort being made, but the meditation is perfect. So this is a dispassionate state. Viraga is definitely present here, that the mind is just at peace. But there's really nothing to do at that stage. This is said to be the last stage that one can attain by effort, by striving. And you just sit there and wait for it to unfold, which will be dependent on your past karma and your state of your paramis and so on. You can't really force it beyond that stage. Okay. Okay, next question. Bhante, how can I reconcile meditation practices that contradict each other when both seem beneficial to me? My meditation teacher, Mahasi Sayadaw tradition, discourages me from practicing breath meditation and says that I should just stick one practice. A lot out of breath meditation, change in my mind that I don't like, more depression, anxiety, less well-being, and calm. If I ignore my teacher's instructions, I feel kind of guilty over that. It brings a lot of doubt and indecision into my meditation. Do you suggest I work through that? Okay, that's a difficult question to answer, because I don't want to undermine or contradict your teacher if you have faith in your teacher. And he may know your particular situation. He may know what's best for you. But in general, I would take a somewhat different approach. I think that doing breath meditation is actually very conducive to doing vipassana. That as it provides a calmness and a clarity to the mind that then you can take to the vipassana work. So, I'm of the opinion and the tradition that says that the two go hand in hand. But as I said, he may know your particular mental state, that perhaps you're using. Here's total speculation, but perhaps you're using escaping into breath meditation to avoid the difficult work of vipassana, of not wanting to look at things. That's a possibility. I think you'd have to talk it through with your teacher. Can you talk briefly on dispassion related to work and livelihood. Um, yeah, that's actually a practice in many traditions is called the karma yoga, which is, taking meditation or meditative state into actual tasks and work in the world. And the perfection of that is to be able to do a task without attachment to results, to be present in the moment and do the task uh, as perfectly as you can without a sense of desire, just doing doing of non-doing. Some Zen traditions make this a part of their teaching, and they use various practical skills like calligraphy or archery as a training. Um, one one very clear example I remember seeing in a Zen book, talking about the use of calligraphy as a meditation training, and it had a photograph of a Japanese character drawn by a master, and beside it was the same character drawn by um, a student, and they looked very similar, but there was something indefinably better about the one by the master. And then below, he'd done the editor of the book had included a magnification of the end of one of the brush strokes, and you could see clearly what the difference was. That the stroke made by the master ended very cleanly and crisply, like something cut off with an X-Acto knife, whereas the end of the stroke done by the student was kind of fuzzy and indeterminate. And the explanation was that the master is either making a stroke or not. There's no moment of hesitation or indecision. So the another way of expressing that is to say that the cognitive mind doesn't get involved. You're just doing it. You're just making the character and doing it perfectly because it's not driven by desire. But the student has a desire in his mind to make a perfect character, and that corrupts the performance of the task. Bhante, where can I find something analogous to early Pure Land practice in the Pali Suttas? Um, I don't think you find an exact analogy, but there's a first of all in the cosmological vision there's a category of worlds, of realms that are called, there's 5 of them that are called Sudawasa, which means pure land or pure abode. And this may have been the origin of the Pure Land teachings. Uh, these are places where the Anagami, the one who's almost fully enlightened but not quite, goes after death. Another parallel would be in the practice of Buddhanusati, which is contemplating the qualities of the Buddha. It's the closest thing you really find in Theravada, I think, to the kind of devotional practice of Pure Land. Next one, doesn't the fact that certain anesthetic drugs can break the continuity of consciousness prove that consciousness is dependent or produced by the brain? No, I don't think that proves that at all, because the continuity of consciousness is not broken. It just goes on a different track than the external world. I mean, I've been under total anesthetic once in my life. I had an operation. I was put under anesthetic, and it was quite a remarkable experience because it's not being put to sleep at all. Uh, the My memory of it is that the anesthesiologist put the cone over my head with the gas, and he said, "Count from 10 backwards," and I went 10, 9, 8, 7, and then I opened my eyes and I was in the recovery room, and it was like an hour and a half later. There was no sense of time having passed. So the continuity of consciousness was not broken. And I think this is a parallel to existence in the realm of the asanya beings, the unconscious beings. It's said that they can live for hundreds of kappas without a single mind moment. And then as soon as the consciousness arises, they reborn somewhere else. And it's described quite explicitly that way, that the stream of consciousness is going on a different timeline than the rest of the universe. Okay. Let me see if I can. They do these, the text in this chat in very small font. I gotta enlarge it to be able to see these. But then that makes scrolling it tricky. Okay, next question. Quite often, when I meditate well and reach stillness of mind, no narrative thoughts, I'm left with a sense of aversion to experience in general. It seems fake. How do I move past the aversion? You may be touching the state of nibbida, which in its initial stage can sometimes feel like aversion. You just have to keep going, get through that to the state of viraga. Next one. Is it possible to be reborn in heavenly realm if one still has ill will in the form of irritation and boredom, but doesn't wish harm upon anyone? Yeah, I don't think you have to be perfect to be reborn in the heavenly realm, but because the heavenly realms are still within the sense desire realm. So the beings that are born there still have some defilement. But your sila would have to be good, meaning that you shouldn't act upon on ill will. You shouldn't hurt anyone. But ill will, but irritation and boredom will continue to arise from time to time in the mind stream of everyone who's not well, irritation will cease for the Anagami, but boredom only really ceases for the Arhat. So they're not something that's overcome easily. Where is the place for sexual desire in the 5 aggregate system? Is it Sankara or Vedana? I would say it's a complex. It's a Sankara, but it has it actually is a Sankara, but it has a very strong effect on Vedana as well, and also the which we're talking about with this sutta, the aggregate of sanya or perception. Sexual desire arises from perceiving signs and particulars. And this is the meditation on 32 parts of the body is a training in perception, to perceive a body differently by focusing on different signs and particulars. So it's a complex of and also it's probably all 5 aggregates are involved to some degree. That's why it's so difficult to overcome, because of course it also involves the body. There's a bodily response to sexual desire. Next question. How can I get over a grudge against a former romantic partner who was unfaithful? I try sending metta, but he becomes corrupted by latent sexual desire for her. Yeah, that's difficult. You shouldn't, it's actually advised specifically in the Visuddhimagga not to develop metta specifically to someone that you can possibly develop sexual desire for, because he easily becomes corrupted by that. So that's really not the best way to do it. There's a sutta where the Buddha talks about his early life before he left home. And there's actually, we have very little. He talked about that very little, but this is one little anecdote that he did share. He said that there was one time I was attracted to this woman, and I saw her talking and laughing with other men, and it made me feel jealous, and it caused suffering. And then I just decided not to be concerned by it, just to let it go. Why do I need to concern myself with this woman and what she does? And then he was free of it. So I think that, the bottom line of that story and the advice to give is to, although it may not be so easy, but just try and let it go. Like, don't let it bother you anymore. Don't think about it or be concerned with it. It's in the past. It's done. It's far away. It's no longer your concern, and there's no reason for you to keep holding on to that. I want to forgive, but it is very difficult. Continuation of the previous one. Yeah, I don't think even forgiveness is really the issue. It's letting go. It's just make it irrelevant. Who cares? It's something that happened, and it's no longer a part of your life, and forget it. Ajahn, if there's time, would you be able to answer the portion again after the intention to make the student more afraid of the teacher than the void? The answer was cut off. I don't know I think that was really the point of that answer. I don't know if I really had anything to say after that of consequence. Talking about how some teachers can manifest a fierceness in order to act as a stimulus to sluggish students. So if the student is kind of afraid of the teacher, it might have a benefit. Next one. Society sells us passion and attachment everywhere. How can we break free from external stimulus? Is secluding oneself completely the only way? Well, certainly secluding oneself from media and advertising and so on is one way of finding peace from that. But that may not be possible entirely if you're living in the world. Try not to pay attention to it or take it seriously, or don't let it enter your consciousness. See it as irrelevant. Same as I said to that fellow who had an old girlfriend that he kept thinking about. Just try to make these things irrelevant to yourself. It's just noise. How exactly do paramitas go from life to life? I'm generous in this life. Does it mean I'll be generous in the next life too? Does intentional avoidance of negative actions generate positive karma, or does it merely prevent bad karma from arising? For example, avoid stepping on ants, abstain from drugs. He has like two parts to that question. Regarding the paramitas, yeah, it's the idea that the paramitas are qualities that carry over, but you can also lose your paramitas. Like if you're generous in a previous life, then you'll have a tendency to be generous in this life, but then you might, through bad influences or bad thought process, you may lose that and become stingy. So paramitas are not, they're conditioned, so they're not permanent or stable, but they do carry on, and you strengthen them every time you act upon them, make them more stable, more solid, more lasting. And avoiding negative actions generate positive karma. For example, avoid stepping on ants or deciding to abstain from drugs. Yeah, well, there is positive karma just from abstaining from negative actions, because you're doing, actually, if you're like avoiding stepping on ants, you're actually then taking a different set of action than you would if you were stepping on ants. So you are making positive karma. That's the whole idea of the precepts. All the 5 precepts are all expressed really in negative terms. Not to kill, not to steal, and so on. And that's the critical aspect of sila, or morality. And if you do, on top of that, if you do actual positive actions, like actions of generosity and so on, that's more good karma, and that's really the kind of karma that tends to a heavenly rebirth. Please do spread a light on Lankavatra Sutra. Thank you. Oh, well, the Lankavatra Sutra, what to say about it is, it may actually have been written, composed in Sri Lanka at the Abhayagiri Monastery. It's an early Mahayana text. It's been, actually, honestly, I have read it, but it's been a while, and I don't remember the details. Except that it was like many of the early Mahayana texts, it's very exuberant in descriptions of miraculous events and so on. Next, does Theravada endorse noble sacrifices as opposed to suicide? I've heard the story where the Buddha feeds himself to starving lions in order to save their lives. Is this from Theravada or Mahayana? I don't know I don't recall where he feeds himself to lions, but there is a Jataka story where the Buddha was reborn as a rabbit, and he threw himself into a fire to feed a starving yogi. And this was given as a developing the paramita of generosity, but also of adhitthana, because the backstory is that the rabbit had made a vow that if he saw anyone in need, he would help them. But then he saw this yogi starving from lack of food, and he had nothing to give to the yogi. He decided to give his own body. That's but then it turns out the climax of the story is that the yogi turns out to actually be Saka in disguise, and the fire, and he uses it's all like an illusion, and the fire doesn't burn the rabbit at all. The rabbit's safe, and he rewards the rabbit by painting the image of a rabbit on the moon. So that I didn't really I couldn't really see the rabbit in the moon until I went to Thailand. And in the tropics, the moon is turned 45 degrees from the angle of view, is turned 45 degrees from the way it is in the northern latitudes. And yeah, it does look like a rabbit. So now I can look at the full moon and mentally turn it, and I can see the rabbit shape in there. I understand Dana is easy. Behaving as a Dewa is best for the mind. Also, the Dewa realm is most desirable by practitioners. However, there is also war between Dewas and Asuras. Can you clarify why there is still war after death? The war only affects the lower two uh, sagas, heaven worlds. There's six sensual heavens, and two of them are still associated with the earth. They're on Mount Sinnaru. The four great kings halfway up, and Tawatingsa at the top. So they still have their feet on the earth, so to speak. So they're still not free from conflict. The first realm that's free of any conflict, where there's no war, there's no animosity, is the Yama world, the next heaven above, which is in space above the earth. That war between the Asuras and the Dewas is very interesting from a mythological point of view. That we find parallels to that in Greek and Norse mythology as well. That there are different classes of divine beings that are perpetually at war. It seems to be a very old legend. How can I help my cats and dogs to be reborn in a better realm? I think first, firstly, by setting an example for them, by being kind and pure in your own expression. Um, I think it doesn't hurt for them for them to hear some dhamma or some chanting, even though there's stories in the suttas about or in the commentaries really about animals that take a heavenly rebirth because they heard that dhamma being chanted, and although it's they can't understand it, there's something still touches them inside and affects them. One of these stories is about a frog that the Buddha was giving a talk, and the frog crawled out of the pond, moved by the sound of the Buddha's voice, although he didn't understand a word. And there was a man standing listening to the Buddha, leaning on a stick, and he shifted his weight, and without knowing it, he put his stick on the frog and crushed it, and the frog was instantly reborn in the heaven realm. Is there any Pali equivalent to the Sanskrit word Rita? I don't think so. Nothing comes to mind. I have an idea what Rita is, but maybe maybe as my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm not really an expert on the Vedic stuff, but Rita, I think, is like a divine harmony, divine law, fate. I don't think there's really any Pali equivalent to that. What is mindfulness according to Abhidhamma? Sati is the quality. It's a sankhara to be developed, and it's. I think the best short definition is remembering to be present. No, so it's the mind that's fully awake and engaged and present in the present moment. And it's listed as one of the sankharas, as a Sobhana sankhara. Do persons with Asperger's and autism benefit from meditation? I think so. I don't see why not. Probably, probably in some ways they might even find it easier to do samatha meditation. I do know that it's not always recommended for people with schizophrenia. It can be a complicating factor. It's not really helpful for extreme mental states. But for Asperger's or autism, I think it could help. Okay, so I think we'll let it go for now. We had a fairly good connection this time. It was a little glitchy now and again, but it held out. So let's thank the mysterious devas of the internet for letting us have our time together. And we'll meet again next week, same time.